Hi there, I'm Brittany,
I'm Maria.
and this is the Be More podcast.
We kind of did it right.
We did it right. Okay, how are
Yeah.
you?
I'm good. How are you? How's the married life?
It is interesting.
Yeah.
We'll definitely talk more about this next time, guys. We have Monica coming on our next episode to help Maria critique my wedding.
It's
Um,
not critiquing. No, we had a really good time. Don't say that.
but I have to say the thing that's really interesting about being married after being together for 10 years is that like Dan and I are very like happy and like, like yay, marital bliss, but nothing has changed in our relationship, but our relationship to the people around us has changed.
Oh, I see.
You know what I
It's
mean? But
because you're
it
married now?
hasn't, right, but it hasn't. So
Okay.
that's been like very interesting. Um but no, it's great.
That's good. Did
We
you
can
fix your last names yet? The both of you?
absolutely not. You know how long it takes to go through
That's
that
gonna take
process?
forever. I know.
Like
I
to go
know. Especially the both of you are doing it. So like that's
I have
gonna be
decided that
insane.
if before the end of this month I actually like do the
Hmm.
reviews for all of the vendors that like because there's
Hmm.
still stuff to do after you get married, which is the worst part. Like there's so many things to do. I will do one of the tasks a month because there's no timeline on it like there was for
Yeah.
planning the wedding, so I don't care because
Good. Yeah.
otherwise I'm gonna be annoyed and frustrated. So
And
we're
like
just gonna
what's a last name? Like
right, like what difference
it'll
does it
it'll
make?
happen. Yeah.
Exactly. We'll get there. So we're referred to with them now, but it's not all the legal stuff will get
It's
dealt
not
with.
legally changed yet.
Yes,
Right.
which is
Yeah.
fine.
No, I mean
Uh,
your wedding, I ate so much.
I ate so much and ate so much for days after because we brought so much of it home with us.
Really?
Yes, it was great, but I think I
The
still have
whole
it like stuff in the fridge.
the coffee machine at the end was just like I got a
Was it
cappuccino. I was like, yes, I'm good to like drive home at night.
beautiful?
It was
So
great.
glad to hear it. Aw, awesome. We'll definitely talk.
Well,
I definitely want to
that's
hear.
next week. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to. I know you guys want to hear, and I want to
Yeah.
hear all of like the thoughts, and I can't wait to hear what Monica has to say.
It was
Um,
fun. It was fun time.
it was fun times, but we want to actually stick to what we said we were going to do and kind of complete the cycle on talking about like stress and
Yeah.
emotions and burnout and like all that fun stuff, which ended up Maria and I totally did not do this all on purpose. It's just kind
Uh-huh.
of greater intervention of helping make a nice like segue plan for us.
Hmm.
Um, so that's what we're gonna talk about burnout a little bit today. So
Yeah.
get like yourself in a spot to like take some breaths, friend,
Yeah.
because this is gonna be a lot. And Maria and I are
Uh-huh.
talking about this because it's something that we deal with, and I think it's really
Constantly.
interesting. The spark of inspiration for this was that I listened to a podcast interview um, with two sisters. They're actually twin sisters, which made it really more
Oh, I
interesting.
didn't know they were twins. I knew they were
Yeah,
sisters because of the episode. Yeah.
their names are Emily and Amelia Nagoski. I hope I said that right.
Yeah.
Um, and I think this recent book was published in 2020 or 2019, and they wrote a book called Burnout. And they talk a lot about the science of burnout and what happens to our bodies and how to. I think a lot about it. A lot of it's how to cope with it. Um,
Hmm.
but this was super inspiring to me when I listened to it, and I had to share it with Maria because I was like, "Oh my god, this is amazing!" But
I
these,
also,
go ahead.
sorry, I also like how, because I have the podcast episode title on my phone right now, um, burnout and how to complete the stress cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Like that whole completing the stress cycle is
That was
also
the
an
part that
interesting
was
point.
genius because I feel
Yeah.
like stress is a thing that we all experience and we all talk about all the time, but I like how their take on it really like nailed it down as a thing,
Yeah.
right? And it's
Yeah.
like one of
Sorry.
those things.
It's like a I don't think people see it as a cycle.
No,
Like
I
it's just like
never
a
would
thing
have
that you
understood that
go
either.
through. Yeah, you just go through and it closes, but that is kind of a cycle.
Yeah, and we're gonna get
Yeah.
all into like the science of like stress
Yeah.
and what how we end up in burnout. But
Mhm.
yeah, so these two really kick ass badass sisters.
They're both
And this
doctors
wasn't
too.
this didn't come out of like nowhere. One of them is actually like a health education
Hmm.
and like counselor, and the
Yeah.
other one is like a oh my gosh, a
She's like,
conductor. She
yeah,
like
so she's
studied
like in
musical
in
composition and
music.
conduction. Yeah. And the reason a big thing that brought them together to write this book is that the musically inclined sister went through a doctoral program that she was the only woman who ever completed the program
Hmm.
because misogyny is real in classical music. And all through her time, she got really sick, was in the hospital for like undiagnosable pains in her body. Come to find out that it was all like stress she was holding on to, and it was manifesting inside her, and all this crazy stuff. So
Can relate.
her health education sister was like, hey, read all this stuff about emotions and
Yeah.
stress and what it does to you. And she was able to overcome it because she learned a lot. But through this process, they both realized like a lot of people don't know a lot about stress and how it affects us and all that great stuff. So
Yep.
they wrote this kick-ass book that I have on my list to order because there's so much more in it than what we're going to talk about today.
I'm sure. Yeah, we just scratched the surface because we just
Yeah.
listened to one podcast episode.
Yes, but it's, I think, really good information because we're going to talk a little bit about the history and understanding it, and then like how it relates to things we talked about before, and then some of the things that they talked about with like what Maria said in their title of how to get through the cycle of stress.
Cycle.
This blew my mind. Just understanding it as a cycle, it makes it like something that you can
Easier
actually
to digest.
freaking finish.
Yeah.
But anyway, so the research that they had gathered and shared was that apparently, and I didn't know any of this either, which was baffling to me, Herbert Freudenberger, which sounds like a made-up name from like Rick and Morty, but he was the first person to give burnout a definition back in 1975, and which is
Pretty
crazy to
recent.
me because that means
75.
that like it's funny how we talk about how like, you know, society these days is so much more stressful. Like people weren't experiencing this like 50 years ago.
I
Or
feel like
maybe
they just
not
didn't
to
have
the
a
extent that they are
name.
now.
No, I think it's because if you give it a name, then you have something more easily like identifiable to like
That's
name,
true.
like you know,
But
like
the fact that it wasn't enough of an issue that it didn't have to be identified until 1975 means that like our cultural societal changes created this monster. Hi, Beezus. My cat is all of a sudden sitting on the windowsill next to me.
Yeah, I guess so.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
It
we've
could-
made
yeah.
this our own monster. It didn't exist before, or like I
Yeah.
think right.
Or-
It wasn't big enough to have a name.
Yeah, exactly. And then now that it has a name, people can point to it more easily.
Yeah,
Right?
that's true.
Yeah.
But anyway, he breaks it down into like these three components of making the perfect storm, and he defined them as emotional exhaustion, a decreased sense of accomplishment, and depersonalization. So we're
Big
gonna like
word.
super nerd out and
Yeah.
define. Well, I'll tell you at least how he defines them. I'm literally sitting here scratching my cat, and it's making me so happy right now. So emotional exhaustion is like a fatigue that comes with caring too much for too long, which I feel like is just our existence. Like that enough in and of itself
that's just our
is just our
personality.
existence. Decrease a sense of accomplishment is a sense that nothing that we do is going to make a difference, which is just so sad. And then depersonalization is the depletion of empathy, caring, and compassion.
Yeah, sounds like burnout.
Which is literally depersonalization could literally be like being a robot if you wanted an easier.
And that's when I know I'm burnt out. When I'm like, I don't care.
Right. Like don't talk. Like, yeah, I don't want to interact.
Don't talk to me. Yeah.
Totally. So those are the three components. And it's funny. What I thought was really interesting is that, and really annoying and frustrating, but reporting about these three components and about burnout only started in like professional world. Like they were only
like
looking at professionals.
Productivity.
And if you look back at like so like the chunk of probably like professionals that they're looking at was probably from like the 1950s to the 1970s. A majority of that populace of what would be a professional doesn't even count women.
Makes sense.
So then they didn't say
like,
this in the podcast, but this is something that I was thinking about in terms of like social aspects to this, is that like you're saying professionals, but like the
like
class of people that were professionals were white men.
Yeah, still at that time, correct.
Right. So that I thought was interesting, and we'll talk more on this in the future too. But so I thought that was really interesting. And then they talked about how like women, oddly enough, with what we just said, women tend to be the ones who suffer more from burnout, especially because of that emotional exhaustion. And then we tapped on this a little bit, I think, in our last episode too, where like women just like we carry more of the
burden,
all of the things that we're talking about, caring too much, like feeling like they want to do something to make a difference, right, and help others, and like having empathy and compassion. Like that's Those are all traits that are related to women.
Right. And like I couldn't tell you why.
I can't tell you why either.
Intrinsically,
I mean, there's something going
generationally.
on, but I
Yeah,
feel like
yeah.
there's also something going on genetically, right? If you think about, and like biologically, if you think about like the woman's purpose of
Generational
being
trauma.
a nurturer too, like that's,
Have you heard of generational trauma?
yes,
Yeah. Do you think it's just that?
current.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be that too. Honestly, yeah, I'm sure it has something to do with that. Um,
Just raise your hand. Yeah.
anyway, the next thing that I wrote down, which was funny, was like, this is bullshit then if so much of the professional exhaustion started in studies at the time when most professionals were men. So I think it's
Yeah.
interesting how they're realizing like women tend to be the ones who like suffer from burnout more. But like when we first started studying this, we were only
It was
studying
for
men.
men. Yeah.
Um,
It's funny
and
how
then
it started out as a professional study, as in like, okay, they're basing this off of someone's productivity to help the economic
right,
society.
which means it was probably paid by somebody who was like, "Can you figure out why I can't get my people to do more, or why they all turn into zombies when they
Yeah.
come into work?" Which is funnier. And then speaking of work, they said that people who work in the realms of service, um, or like a people versing people type of position, tend to have higher rates of burnout. And I can tell
Mm.
you this as a first example that this is 100% true and sucks. Um, but the
Mhm.
two bigger things that we are going to dive into a little bit more are what sits behind burnout and things like the emotions we talked about, like caring and empathy and compassion, like a sense
Mhm.
of self worth, and the stress that kind of triggers that being in a place of caring for too long and having to
Yeah.
combat stress in the process, which are two things that I think we talked about in previous episodes.
Yeah. I feel like we touched
Um,
upon it.
so I loved how they gave emotions like a scientific explanation and stress like a scientific
Mm.
explanation.
Yeah.
I think it's really funny how we spend so much of our lives like being told we have to like manage our emotions and being told that we need to be a certain way, like we need to be robots, but science literally tells us that like we are emotional things before we're anything else.
Yeah.
And this definition of emotions literally like very nicely packages that.
Yeah.
So your emotions are neurological sensations that travel through your entire body. They are involuntary neurological responses. They
Mm-hmm.
have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and move through cycles.
Right.
Um, and they are things that we feel and exist inside of our bodies.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we talked about in a previous episode how like researchers for emotions understand that like we are extremely emotional beings, but we don't know how to like express our emotions well or like identify them well. We just feel stuff.
Yeah.
Um, so I thought this was crazy because they talk about, I think stress, they talk about stress as like a neurological
As
bodily
an emotion.
response. Yeah, as an emotion.
Yeah.
Um, but I never thought about an emotion as like a cycle too.
Because like you don't really. I mean, we do, but again, it's giving a name to something.
Yeah, and making
You
it
know what I'm
make
saying?
more like actual sense.
Like everyone knows like when they're sad and all of a sudden they're done. It's like, oh, okay, I'm done with that. Like, but
Yeah.
it's not like you don't think of it as like I've completed the cycle of being sad.
Yeah. Or like
Especially if
why we
like
can't get out of sadness when we feel sadness and then it turns into trauma.
right, because then like see also that's very nuanced because like you can identify as being sad or depressed and then it'll turn to anxiety, but you still think it's depression. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like you finished the depression, now it's anxiety, but it's like very minute sometimes. That's like
Yeah.
you're going through the motions. You just don't think of it as a cycle. And then all
Yeah.
of a sudden one day you're not stressed or anxious or depressed and you're just like content.
Right. And you're like, wow, I feel better today. And you're like,
Yeah,
I
I'm
don't know
like,
how
oh,
that
I think
happened.
that's done. I think that's done now. And then, but like when we're content, you don't really think about it.
So what I like, I'm gonna just read what I wrote, and then you feel free to comment because I can't, guys. I can't like go back to stuff when I feel it in the moment. I'm really good at completing a cycle when it
Yeah,
comes to my
yeah,
emotions. I
yeah.
say
Because
whatever I need to say, and I need to get it out in the moment, and then I'm done with
and
it. So
then it's
I'm just
it.
gonna read my cycle of emotion to
Yeah,
Maria.
go ahead. Yeah,
Um, so this is what I was thinking about when I was listening to this part of the interview.
yeah.
What's frustrating about emotions is that because they serve as a tunnel for us to travel through, when we hit exhaustion if we don't get through it all the way, right? That this is like what
Correct.
emotional exhaustion is.
Yeah.
And so often because we're not able to complete the entire cycle and make it all the way through the tunnel successfully, we end up stuck in it and like we just said, not even realizing it. The harder part is that the more intense feelings, oh, this part bothers me. The more intense feelings like rage, sadness, or shame those that are like really hard for us to talk about are the ones that we need support. We need to talk about and get support from others in order to be able to move through the tunnels
That.
on
Yeah,
our
yeah,
like
yeah.
at all.
Yeah.
Which is just funny because that's one of the proof moments of saying how like we need one another, because if we don't have these conversations with people, we're not able to successfully move through these things on our own. Like we're not expected to be able to handle all of these emotions on our own.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
okay. And
Agreed.
then the worst part about that is that those really intense emotions like rage or sadness or shame
Mm-hmm.
are the ones that we hold on to. And then we get stuck in these cycles, which leads to the exhaustion because we're not able to cope with them properly,
Yeah.
or like manage conversations that we need to have about them to be able to get the support we need to move through them successfully. And
Mm-hmm.
then I wrote at the very end, what the hell, that totally fucking sucks. Like we are our own worst enemies in not being able
Oh,
to complete the
100%.
cycles.
But also, if you're not ready to even talk about it, you don't even know that you have that.
That's true. Which
That's
is why
also
like
like
you need to have so
a
much awareness
layer.
of it.
I know the self awareness is also key, but also it's just like another layer because it's like, what was I gonna say? Like, I can be anxious, but I don't know what I'm anxious about, and it could have been manifested because of something that I'm not packing. But like, I don't know that. I don't have the self awareness yet to understand that. Thankfully, I mean, before. Now I'm like, okay, I think this is because of this, because this
Mm.
happened yesterday or like today or whatever. So like it's a journey, but also a lot of people don't care for that.
Or like just don't even know that there's space to do it.
Correct. Yeah, yeah. But again,
And it's
that
scary as shit when you do it and you realize that you're.
oh,
I
it's
had this moment
terrible.
like a couple weeks
Oh, it's
ago where I was
terrible.
like, okay, Brittany, what's the real reason why you're anxious? And then I got to the real reason and I was like, oh God, that fucking sucks.
It sucks and it's like a lot to unpack, and therapy is also a thing that helps people go through this. But if
Yeah,
you're doing it
for
by
sure.
yourself, it's even harder because like you have to like somehow do it in a healthy way that doesn't self-destruct you.
Yeah.
Like it is very hard. But in essence, yeah, the whole cycle, that's why people get into like manic modes or like deep depressions that will turn into like not seasonal but like all year round
Oh yeah.
depression. Um so I don't know. It's a lot, especially like shame. Like that's a big one that I keep forgetting that like is the thing.
Yeah.
Shame and guilt and like all that stuff. So it's like, ugh, I don't even want to touch that honestly.
And it's heavy, like it's so heavy because there's so many layers to like where shame comes from. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but okay, so ready? This is the next this is another paragraph. Are you ready for this? Um,
Sure.
what's and this is like I think this is the reason why digging deeper as to why this is an issue for us, right? As like a society. It's so sad because like this, there's so much misinformation that we get from a young age, and we don't make space in our relationships for being able to talk about our feelings. We talk about the issues. This part baffled me. I had a whole
Whole thing.
realization in this. Ready?
Like a whole.
So if you think about it, like when we're little and we have a problem, right, and we're growing up, we talk all the time about like how do I problem solve? How do I find a resolution? Right? How
Yeah.
do I creatively think to work my way around this? And I do that in a painstaking way. Like I am a problem solver in the most desperate kind of way. Like I have
Okay.
to like if there's an issue, like I'm gonna find some type of solution for it.
Like right now and like
Well,
right now.
not even like right now. Well, yeah, sometimes it has to be like an immediate thing, but I get like really
Mm-hmm.
like focused on having to find a solution. Um, okay, so ready? This is insane. So not only are we not making space to have conversations about the fact that we have emotions, what we are putting emphasis on is problem solving our way out of the emotion, right? Like, oh, this is
Oh,
happening,
as opposed to feeling
the emotion,
like
right?
going
And
through it.
this
Yeah.
part baffled me because one of the things that these the Nagowski, I'm gonna say their name wrong 1,000 times, that the sisters brought up is
Yeah.
that your the things that you feel and the emotions you feel are separate from behaviors and actions. So,
Mm-hmm.
like, whatever, like you're saying too, right? Like, whatever you're feeling that's triggering your anxiety, you can deal with whatever the issue is, but you
Yeah.
still have to deal with the anxiety that you're having because they become two separate things.
Yeah.
So, one of the things that I realize is I,
Oh
so I'm
God.
constantly I'm constantly rethinking about whether I actually know how to address emotions and make space to be able for somebody else to be able to process their emotions. That's the whole point of like why we have relationships, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
we have to feel like we have to behave ourselves when we're talking about, and I know this all the time, right? If I'm sad and like I'm crying and I'm upset about something, I remember hearing all the time that it's like it's fine, just deal with it. Like don't be sad, just like deal with the prop. Like, and it's not from necessarily from my parents. I just feel like I always heard like find a solution to it. Like don't get upset
Yeah.
about it, find a solution to it. And it's like
Yeah.
you're taking away the space for someone to like literally you're stopping people. It's not even us stopping ourselves from going through the cycle. Other people are making a boundary that's stopping
And
us from getting
like,
through the cycle, and then we never know how to go through the cycle as we get older.
what do you do about that? As a friend that's going, as someone has gone to you like all stressed out, what do you respond? I've now not said much while people are going through a whole situation. I'm usually like, you'll be fine, as in like not right now, you're not fine. I get that, but you will
Right.
be eventually. And then have them just randomly like, you'll be fine, like not and like not egging them on or like saying like just deal with it. Like I've now just resorted to like, you'll be fine, and that's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do
And
you have
it's just
anything else?
I don't, and this is okay, so ready? This is like
It's hard being the friend
I
on the other
feel
side
like yeah, I feel like we just need to make more space for people to
to
really.
really just be in
And it's
that
funny
mode.
because like it's funny because that's literally what therapists do, right?
Yeah, I've
But
learned that because of therapy. I've
right, oh
learned that
yeah,
like I
yeah,
cannot say no, it's okay, because I know
right,
it's not okay.
exactly.
Instead, I literally just say you will be fine. The
But
will is key.
it's how do we have like
Hmm.
I don't know what the right answer is, but
I
like
don't either. I'm just saying,
in
like,
my
yeah,
brain,
yeah.
the whole point of having a relationship is about having emotional support, right?
A
Like
hundred percent.
that's what makes a relationship flourish and
Yeah,
or
I
like
agree.
that's the foundation for a good one. So it's like
Yeah.
if we don't know how to make space for that,
Then what are you good? Not good for, but what are
like
you
what is our relationship
contributing?
doing? Right.
What are you contributing to the relationship? I agree.
Because other than that, and I mean, I maybe you can relate to this too. I've had people where I've been in friendships for years and years and years with them, and then I have
Yeah.
a moment where I realize like, oh, there's no substance to this relationship. Like it's
Oh,
literally just
100%.
convenience and bullshit,
It's
and
out of
like
convenience or like
there's
very small talk. Yeah, yeah,
right,
yeah,
and
yeah.
there's no like substance of emotions. And then now I'm very like intentional when I make friends. I'm very much like we're going to talk about this stuff right away. And if you can't handle and I can't make space or we can't do it, then we shouldn't be friends. Like,
Yeah, because like at the end of the day, like what are you contributing if you're not being
right. Like,
emotionally
we
there?
should be doing that for like, and it's not even that you need to, right? And then there's the other end of that where like you feel like you're always taking on the problem of your friends, right? Or
That's the
you're
second
always their
issue.
emotional support or like emotional crutch. That's different too. But like,
Yeah, yeah.
being able
That's
to,
draining.
there's like a sense of being a therapist in like every relationship because if your friend brings an issue to you, you
You
need to
need to
be able to
help them.
make space for it. And it's not even like you need to do
Yeah.
it for them, but you need to make space
No,
for
no, no,
them
no.
to do it themselves.
I feel like growing up, it's been you when we're younger, we don't know better. We're just trying to give everyone
No, we
advice
don't.
and like assume that we know things, and like some people like when we're younger, we appreciated it, but like I don't think we needed it. The older we get, the older I get at least, I'm like, they might not need whatever the hell I'm thinking. Let me just say like two words and see if they need me to say something further. Like,
And
it's like it's the awareness of like what other people want
mhm.
and need. As an empath, this is all we think about
Literally.
anyway.
And you're
Um,
so
and it's like I'm not here to give you advice if you don't want it. So I'm not gonna give advice outright, as opposed to me 10 years ago.
yeah. And I'm so much better at being like, like I was thinking about this. Like, can I share it with you? Like, I was
Yeah, or
thinking about
like
this idea. Like, and can I share what my perspective on this with you?
I usually ask people like, okay, are you okay? And then that kind of like, or like, what do you need? Or like whatever. And then that usually triggers I just need someone to listen to, or like I need advice. Like
Yeah.
it's either or. So it
Yeah.
comes with age and also self-awareness. And that's, I mean, it takes forever though to figure
It
that out.
does. It's just I mean,
Especially if you haven't gone to therapy and like you haven't seen a therapist work, and like when they're like a, just like a talk therapist, like it's
right.
so hard.
And it's funny because you're gonna have so many people are gonna, and it's, ugh, so many
And
people
so
are
many
gonna
people,
come to you
yeah,
and be like, I don't know what I need, and you're gonna make
and
space for
that's
them and like
fine.
be like,
Yeah.
I'm making space for you to talk this out and figure it out because like you need to talk, and they're gonna be like not happy with that, right? And they're gonna be
And some
mad at
people
you
aren't.
for doing that. But it's like that's why those conversations are really important, and being like,
Yeah.
look, I really want to help you, but this is the way that I see being able to help you best. And that doesn't mean me telling you what to do. That means me making space for you. I'll be here to help you figure it out, but like I'm
Yeah.
not gonna do it for you.
It also is a shift when you realize that, like, okay, for X amount of years that we've been friends, I've just given you advice, but all of a sudden I just stop because like I've learned better. That
Yeah.
is also a big shift into a dynamic, like relationship
Oh
dynamic. So
yeah.
it's like either way, someone's gonna be unhappy for a while until they understand.
Yeah. And there
That's
has to
the
be
whole
like a
thing.
real clear. And I try to be like
Yeah, I try to be clear. I'm like, I'm doing
and
this.
about what, and the better you are at explaining what you need to, like I'm definitely,
Oh yeah, yeah,
I've learned through therapy that I generally am the kind of person who can get there on myself, like on my own. I just need to
yeah.
like be able to like talk through it.
Right. I don't need advice
Right,
really. Like
right.
I just need you to listen to me or just literally physically just sit there.
Yes. And then I have my moments very clearly where I'm like, I really need your input on this. And I will be very open to be like, I'm stressed out. I
What do
really
you
need you to listen
think?
to what I'm
Like,
saying and give me your
yeah.
opinion, because I know, like, I know that feeling of when that little alarm goes off in the back of my head that's like,
Oh my
you're
god.
not sure about this. Like, I know how to,
Like
but,
SpongeBob's brain going
and
haywire.
this is the thing that, and I get this all the time. So, my wedding is a perfect example of this, which is like super annoying and not necessary, but I feel like there's so much. I'm a
Hmm.
super emotional person. Like
Yeah, Brittany cried like 50 different
I
times
cried
that
a
night.
lot at my wedding, but I'm a very
You know, I almost
emotional person.
cried too. Don't worry.
Good. I'm a super emotional person, and I've come into that more as I've gotten older. Like happy things make me cry. Like I was on the phone for like 20 minutes with like a woman that I consider like my aunt, and we just said like really nice things to one another, and I was bawling in the car from it. Like I am, and I've stopped trying to stop myself from that.
Yeah, the trauma has
Right.
has held us
Like
back. Yeah,
I
yeah.
used to stop myself from that all the time. And one of the like the things that they brought up and they talk about in this book too is like how feeling like, going back to what we were saying before, right? Like feeling like we have to behave ourselves with the way that we're feeling. And so much of the time
Yeah.
it comes with those negative emotions like rage and anger and stuff. Like we have to be told like, no, 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 like you dealt with the issue, like you need to deal with the issue at hand. You need
It's
to get
also
out of your emotions.
but also it could also be like don't be too positive
Yeah, that
online
too,
or like
right?
you know, whatever. It's just so
Um,
stupid.
and it's like in either direction it just becomes like this like we have
Pain.
to limit, we literally have to train ourselves for social acceptance and sometimes for safety, which we can talk about later too, but like
Yeah.
we literally have to we unknowingly are trained to stop in the middle of the cycle and then
Mm-hmm.
are never taught how to finish the
Finish.
cycle at a
Yeah.
later point. um I so this is what I said. I was like, it's just sad and unfortunate. And it's even worse that we don't even realize that this is what's leading to so much of the exhaustion we're all feeling. Plus, on top of this, we don't talk about it and we take it out. We take it into our bodies without processing it fully and letting it go, which literally makes us sick. Um,
Literally. Like I
and
feel like
ugh,
case in point with probably a majority of people that have stress and anxiety, I hold it in my shoulders.
mm-hmm.
Some people hold it in their gut, which is why stomach aches are
I do
pretty
both.
prevalent with people that have anxiety.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think secondary is my stomach. But my shoulders are like if you feel my shoulders, like I
can
can't, it's
only
a
imagine,
rock.
dude.
It's a rock. And like that's when I know I'm stressed is because like usually that moment where I'm like, oh, my shoulders up, and I'm like, I put them down. I'm like, oh my god, it's
Oh
like
yeah,
20 pounds have like lifted off my
it's
shoulders.
so funny because mine, I still get tension. I I went to get a massage a couple days before the wedding, and I haven't had a massage in a couple years, and I have honestly probably 20-year-old knots sitting in my shoulders
Yeah, I get
because of
massages
that.
every like 6 months, and the person that does my massage is like, "What the is
Yeah.
wrong with
And you
you?"
want to
And
know
I'm
what's
like,
so
"I'm
funny is
so
that
sorry."
I actively, it's taken me a really long time. So I used to get, um, back at the height of all of my like
Mm.
trauma and stuff when I was in college. And then I was also moving my body because I was studying dance. Let's talk about how fucked up this was. during
Oh
like the
God.
first 2 years, I used to get this is when I really started having panic attacks at this time, and I thought it was just my asthma. Like I had
Oh,
no
really?
idea.
Because you have a it's the
I had sport
sports
induced asthma
induced
because I
asthma.
was out of shape. That's pretty much what sport induced asthma means. Unconditioned for the activity that I was doing, which was so true. But
Oh God.
I used to get like these really weird, like serious, tingly, like burning sensations up the back of my neck. And if I
Oh
would
Jesus, I
ignore
just
it,
hit
if I
my
would ignore
microphone
it, it would
up
turn
here, right?
into like
Right here.
no,
What
like
did it turn
up the
into?
back of my neck, like up the back of
Oh,
my neck, and like sometimes it would come over like to the top of my
it
head.
would come to my head. Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
if I would ignore it, I would be in class, like I'd be taking class, and my vision
yeah,
would start going out.
yeah. That's when my vision gets. Yeah, I get
Mm-hmm.
the same thing. It travels to actually the side
Yep,
of my
and
head, like
all
right here, my temple. It was funny because I literally called my mom. I called my mom one night. I was like, "Mom, like the side of my head is like
really,
pulsating,"
yep,
and she's like, "Why didn't you tell me this earlier?" I'm like, "Can you just like let me know what the hell this is?" She was like, "That's probably a migraine, but like let's check her blood pressure tomorrow."
like
And of
stress
course that like
triggers.
and of course I'm like stressed out, so that obviously
Over that,
didn't
oh,
help.
completely, yes.
And then all of a sudden I like thankfully every night now because it's so and this has actually helped me. I do like neck stretches because like I just physically can't do it anymore, like with
Yep,
my whole shoulders being all tight and whatever. But then I woke up and it was fine. And
yep,
I obviously went to my mom's house and she was like, "No, your blood pressure's fine." She was like, "It's just a migraine. It's probably from your stress." I'm like,
yeah.
"Yeah, probably. Like
And
everything adds up."
we're going into stress now. We're going to talk about stress in a
Yeah,
second
sorry.
too, and why this is all related. No, I mean,
Yeah.
but it's funny because I've moved past this, like in my shoulders,
Mm.
and
I'm slowly moving past it, thankfully.
the terrible part about it is like you said, right? You have a line, like a hierarchy of friends who are waiting to literally take on your stress in your body. So I've moved into like gut and cardiac issues.
Oh
We'll
yeah,
talk about this. When we
my
get to
god,
stress, we'll go to the first. But I first started learning about like how our body physically holds on to
stress
our
anxiety.
feelings,
Yeah.
like and stress included. When I started studying yoga, because I read a book, I feel like I brought this up before, but I read a book called Anatomy of the Spirit. It's by
Mm-hmm.
a woman named Caroline Miss, and the entire book, she is like a yoga therapeutics like
Yeah.
guru lady. Her entire book is about like working with trauma patients who've experienced something, and their trauma develops into a degenerative disease in a certain part of their body. That's where, and it's like all it has to do with chakras too, like based
Yeah.
on whatever chakra center is closest to the area of their body, they start to take it into the organs in their body. So like people who she does case studies on like people who've experienced a lot of heartbreak or like around their like heart chakra or not open about like who they are and can't accept love willingly,
Mm.
develop like breast cancer or like have heart
That's so
issues,
terrifying.
or like people who have issues with their root chakras with like the trauma of their childhood or their like
Yeah.
first years in life, like they develop like digestive issues.
Makes sense.
So it was such an amazing, and I was like, holy shit, like this whole
Yeah.
book just blew my whole world open. um but this was a huge
Right.
thing, like it was an eye-opening to me to realizing like our experiences lead to our emotions, and our emotions are the things that our bodies feel, and if we don't work
Because it's
through
like
these emotions, then we hold on to them.
because like people don't think that an intangible couldn't affect the tangible.
Right,
That's the whole
right.
root of it.
And that's where it comes back to. That's why I love that they put science behind it, because science like makes
Mm-hmm.
something that's intangible feel a little more tangible. But
Literally.
let's break into the
Yeah. Let's go
science
back.
behind stress, right?
Yeah.
So stress, they define stress as oh, actually, you know what? I don't know if I even wrote down what they define stress as. Stress is like another neurological response to something.
Yeah.
But what I really enjoyed was that they define stressors
Yeah.
um, as they can be external, um, like something that's happening around us, or they can be internal, like something we say to ourselves, which is worse.
Which is so much
Which is
worse.
me at 3 in the morning when I wake up and I initiate a stressor and I can feel my heart pumping and I can't fall back asleep. Talk about
Isn't that
me
the
knowing
worst?
that
Yeah.
is the worst. But stressors, whether internal or external, are some things that activate our stress response in our body, and that is like a trigger.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
And our body goes through this, which is why it takes it into all of our organs, right? Our
Mm-hmm.
history, our biology, our kinesiology, all of this, safety is key, right? And like
Yeah.
when we face something that's a stressor, I mean, we have different types of stressors, external stressors now, but when we face stressors back in the day, it was a stressor that was inflicting like a threat on your life,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
Like that
Right.
was the majority of the stressors that we faced. So your
Mm-hmm.
body's knee jerk reaction is to like go into hyper mode
Fight or
and
flight.
yeah, do whatever is necessary. And it's
Mm-hmm.
so funny because they talked about, do you remember how they made the reference to like the gazelle getting bit by the lion?
Very vaguely.
It was very interesting. They talked about how like
Mhm.
our body goes through like a fight, a flight, or a freeze stage.
Oh.
But when
Okay.
we
Yeah.
talk about like we tell people, right, if you think about it, right, if you talk about a bully, it's so funny because one of my cousins is a teacher and she was talking about how like the kids are like a big fan of like this guy who's on does YouTube videos, but
Okay.
he tries to like teach people about how to handle social interactions, but the way he teaches it kind of comes off really skewed and kind of tells them exactly what to do to be the bully instead of like teaching about how to cope. So like it
Okay.
creates like a
It's like negative.
yeah, it creates like a bad
Just
wrap
a bad
around like
situation.
be the
Yeah.
fight person essentially, right? And if you right, and we
Yeah.
always
It's
say if you
all.
run away or if you do nothing you have weakness. Only the people who fight are the people who are strong.
That's a whole different.
I know, and it is a whole nother thing, again, talking about the things that we teach our kids and like the messages they
Yeah.
get and how bad
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
are. But um I'm reading through
Mm-hmm.
my notes again, but
Yeah.
anyway, so it just it's so interesting because they talk about how when it comes to stress our organ systems like can even do the fight, flight, or freeze part. But when we're
Mm.
constantly being bombarded with all of these stressors, after a while, your body just like we
Doesn't
don't
know
train
what.
to freeze. We don't train our body to flight. We
Mm-hmm.
usually train our body like keep going. You have to keep going. You have to fight. You have to keep going. So all of our organ systems go into this crazy place of
And
being
that's what
like
stresses your whole body out. Your whole
right
body just goes. Poof.
hyperactive.
Yeah.
Um, so uh,
And if you have severe anxiety, you're always in that mode.
right.
I'm just saying.
Right, which is the worst part. So I guess anxiety maybe is the feeling.
I think so because like I have
Because stress is the I
I
feel like stress is the physical body response.
manifestation of
Right. But
anxiety.
anxiety is the feeling. And I mean you can induce stress in your body from fear. And you can induce
Yeah,
stress in your body from sadness and you can induce stress
anything
in your body.
really.
Like, you know what
There's
I
also
mean?
good
So
stress too,
right.
isn't
And
there?
that's another thing that they brought up too. Like, um, okay, I'm
There's
gonna
some
read
good
because I wrote this
stressors,
too.
right? There's some good stressors and bad. You just don't know which is which at
Right.
the
And
time.
sometimes we just get harped on getting stuck in
Yeah,
the bad ones.
yeah,
Like if you think about like anticipation and like
yeah.
excitement, that causes
That's
stress in your body, but we
that's
know
a
how to
lot of
finish that
stress.
cycle.
Yes, because
We
then
know how
the
to
event
finish
or something happens, and you're like,
right.
"This is great," and then
Yeah.
it's like, especially case in point is usually like I don't know if interviews or like for jobs are like a good or bad. Depends, I guess, on the person. If they really want this job and they're like anticipating this interview to like
Yeah.
do great, that's a stress on your body. But again, you
It's like
know
a
how to finish it
performance
because
stressor.
right, or yeah, if you're performing like or like if you're in a band and you're doing a concert, like you're anxious, but it's a
Dude,
good
that's what
anxious.
artists live off of that through performance
Exactly.
stress.
Exactly. So it's like, but they know how to finish it because all of a
Yeah.
sudden there's an event that ends it. There
Right.
isn't an event that ends
But it's
depression.
also that's the part of the problem too, right? The event is still separate from the emotion.
Yeah, correct. I agree. Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, like it and
Yeah.
that's hard. Like I don't fucking know how to differentiate between those two things. Like you want to know what? It's so funny and then we'll go back to like the stretch isn't a bad thing. I still have
Hmm.
like moments where if I get excited about something, and this happens if I get scared of things too. If I get excited about something and I can feel the excitement, it's like needing to end the physical response to stress, ending the cycle. And we'll talk about this later too. They say that like being able to move in a really like not thoughtful way, just like moving your body, is a good way to end a stress cycle.
Agreed.
When I get really excited, like a toddler, if you ever watch a kid get really excited about something, you know how they like
They like just
like all
yeah.
over the place. When I get really excited about something, I never do it in like the presence of other people, obviously, but I'll like put myself in a spot where no one's around and I'll be like, ah! And I'll like just I have to get it all out.
No
And I do the
comment.
same thing when I get scared.
Yeah.
And I do it
Interesting.
like to this day. If I am like, even if I'm in my apartment, guys, this is gonna make me sound like such a nut job, but I'll have moments where like something, or I'll have, especially at night, if I have a nightmare and I wake up to go to the bathroom and it's dark in the apartment and I'm like just conscious enough to know what, like, and
Yeah.
see what's going on as I walk back into my room, and I used to do this to Dan all the time. I literally would like jump and like freak myself out a little bit on purpose because that like movement,
Yeah.
and I used to like jump into bed sometimes to do it. Like that little
Oh, I see.
movement
Yeah.
like completes the cycle and I relax and I'm not
Yeah.
scared
It's
anymore.
like, okay, we're done. Yeah. All right,
Right.
next. Yeah.
So
That's interesting.
yeah, like movement has always been that for me. But to go back to like the not being a bad thing, like the one little note that I wrote about this is that that's what's super frustrating is that it's not that stress is a bad thing or that it's like not
No,
good for
yeah.
our bodies, but because it helps us stay alive. But
Yeah.
the issue is that we stay in a state of stress and we're not able to safely move through the cycle of like the stress
Yeah.
response. We halt the stress response.
Agreed.
It brought up a really interesting point for me too about how I love how they brought this up. Like we talk about not being stressed and being at peace and wanting to be in a state of well-being like it's a nirvana. Like it's a
It's
place that we're going to
fleeting.
get to. Like we're not going to have to deal with stress. I'm going to be totally stress-free.
It's fleeting.
And
Everything
that you
is
can just be
fleeting.
there. And
Yeah, that's naive.
right. And it's like not to, and that's why we're talking about this too. I feel like that's the reality of the situation is like stress is something that we have to deal with. We don't have a choice. It is
No.
a bot, unless you go and get like what are those things called where they like poke in the
Oh,
eye?
lobotomy or whatever it's
Then
called.
yes, unless you go and get a lobotomy tomorrow where you're totally desensitized to anything and you don't take on any type of stressors that activate your stress response. Um, it's something that's in our bodies and it's just like we have to be able to know how to, just like we move through peace, like you have to be able to move through stress.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's like
Who like
you have to
go
have
ahead.
awareness of both. It's like that whole yin and yang thing.
Yeah, you can't have one without the other.
Yeah.
Right. But also, when did society tell us that like happiness is like a point that you have to reach and then stay there?
I don't I
Because
don't think
that's
they
the
ever
thing.
did. I mean,
Okay.
if you think about, because I feel like all we ever do all the time is talk about how, like, it's about the journey, not the destination. Like, we hear all those, like, quotes. And, like, if you think about, like, The Pursuit of Happiness as a movie, like, it's a social known thing that we don't have to exist in a state of happiness. We just go through life. But you want to know what kind of fucks it up? Like,
Hmm.
the way we utilize social media.
Oh, like comparing yourself to other people on
But
social
like
media?
if you're
Or
constantly
like,
showing your state of happiness, and it
oh,
subconsciously will make other people seeing it that like why are they not constantly in a state of happiness?
which is why I'm off of Instagram. I
Which
think it's
comes back
fake.
to why, right? Which comes back to all
Hmm.
of the ways that we don't make space. And it's not social media that's the problem. This has been an issue before social media. Social media just created another
It's another
platform for
platform.
us to do
Yeah.
it. But like
Yeah.
we weren't doing it in conversations with people, right? We were
Yeah.
only, and here's a great, like when my parents talk to my other childhood friend parents and they're talking about all the good stuff and all the glory days, it's
All the glory days.
like that's not true. Like you're just sharing, like you're just walking in and sharing all of like your medals from your battles, but you're not having a conversation about the battles you went through.
Yeah, you're just talking about what the end result, but
Yeah,
nothing
you
through.
can't
Yeah.
just always talk about the good stuff. You just can't.
It's just a false sense of everything. I don't know,
Right. And I think
reality.
that's what, even though we know better, especially in times like this when I feel like we're all desperate for good things,
Yeah.
we know better, but we choose to say, like, and that's why people go into like fugue states and why people go into these like crazy, fantastical psychological breaks where they just want the happiness because
Hmm.
they are so obsessed with it and they don't know how to handle the stuff that's not happy that their brain breaks.
Unfortunately, that's a mental breakdown. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and I say all the time, like, when things are hard in life or
Mm-hmm.
like I feel really stressed out and I'm like the whole like, why is this happening? You know, all those fun like existential
Yeah.
questions that you ask.
Yeah.
I find it's hard and it's taken a lot of practice, but I try really hard to find gratitude. And I don't say it as like a fluffy thing, but like if you can't figure out how to do that, you're setting your brain up for all of this shit. You're setting your brain up for the constant burnout and the constant exhaustion and the constant like,
Yeah, you have to find like whatever
what is
grounds you.
life?
Yeah, no, you have to find whatever grounds you, because if you don't know, if you don't have anything, it's super hard to go about life.
Yeah. And
Especially if you're mentally not well.
that's such a good way to say it. It's not even about gratitude is just a means to the end of being grounded. I feel like
Yeah.
that's you have to find something that grounds you. And if gratitude is something that really helps me, I've taken a lot of practice with it. But like
Yeah. Something.
it's exactly what it is. And it's funny because I really love how like they addressed the sisters in the interview addressed like the idea of self-care. And honestly, they hit the nail on the fucking head. So this is what
Yeah,
they
yeah.
said.
I remember this. Yeah.
We talk so much and we emphasize so much about like when we're stressed out and we're burnt out, that like self-care is the answer.
Mm-hmm.
And why, like the question that they posed is that if all of us are responsible for the well-being of ourselves,
Yeah.
but we all live in the world together,
Mm-hmm.
if we're only thinking about ourselves, then how are we making space for the other people to take care of themselves?
It's $1 million question.
Right? Like it was
Yeah,
so the way that
100%.
they brought it up was so genius. And their
Yeah.
argument is that, and they brought such a good example, right? They were talking about how, you know, if you prioritize part of your self-care is you needing to get a certain number of hours of sleep at night, right? Or you have a certain bedtime,
Yeah.
and somebody else in your household like decides I'm going to play really loud music in the middle of your sleep cycle.
Yeah.
They are not, that's great. You're taking responsibility and trying to take care of yourself, but that other person isn't caring about you enough to give you the space to do that, isn't showing that empathy. So the
Yes.
bottom line of,
We're
and
all
that's
in
why
this together.
that's why our society's fucked, right? The bottom line of all of it isn't the self-care, it's the empathy for one another.
Correct. And self-care is so commercialized. It's like,
I know, I hate it.
go out, take yourself out on a date, or like go get a massage, or like whatever. I mean, that's great for your physical well-being.
But at
Whatever.
the same time, right, it doesn't count if you go out and take yourself out to eat, but there's a couple next to you fighting because you can't focus on what you're supposed to be focusing on to calm yourself down.
Yeah.
Or you go to get a massage and your massage therapist has just had a terrible moment and is venting and bitching to you about,
Mm-hmm.
how much their husband or their partner sucks. Like,
Yeah. There's so many variables
that other
in
person still needs to
self-care.
make the
Yeah,
other
make the
people
space.
around you still need to make the space for you to be able to do that. It blew my mind when they started talking about this. This is why people love like gym and yoga communities. This is why people like communities,
Because you're all in there together doing the same thing.
and
Yeah.
you're making like, whether you're doing it intentionally or not, even though I don't think they really are doing it intentionally, but because it's all commercialized now, but you are making space for other people to do that. Just like therapy. That's why therapy
Yeah.
is as fulfilling as it is. There's literally another person sitting there with you, making space for you to do what you have to do.
Correct. And I feel like people don't understand that if they haven't been in non-toxic relationships, friendships, or relationships like romantic or familial, right? Like,
It's really, it really is so
like,
hard.
because like space and taking up space for someone like manifests either just like being physically there or just like mentally, like, or both. And like if you've never experienced that to begin with, you don't know what that means.
That's so true.
Like if you've never
And
experienced something not toxic in your life, you just think that someone being there, like someone being there
it's good
could be
enough,
toxic just
right?
in general. Like, and you may think that that's them taking space and being there for you, but like if their presence is toxic enough, that's not taking up space.
Yep.
That's not like giving you the space. But like some people, again, if you don't know what that means, forget it. Again, it's a journey.
But
Like
you are,
mental
I mean,
wellness.
you're so right with like the fact, because even as I'm thinking about it now, like
Yeah.
my true understanding of what it was like to have somebody else make space for me, because I was always afraid to talk about what I was really
Oh,
experiencing.
yeah.
I didn't know what it was like for somebody to really make space for me to do that until I went to therapy. And then I was
Yeah.
able, through therapy, was able to set up boundaries and like really like mile markers of what I need to be able to say, like, for me to say to Dan and walk up to him and be like, I need like 5 minutes of your time where you're just gonna sit and listen to me talk to you, and then we'll have a
Yeah.
conversation. Like, you know, and I never,
You don't
or to
you,
even be able to say to people that I had established relationships already with, to be able
you
to
don't know how to
say
do
like,
that. Yeah.
and like to be able to say to my parents like, I need you to stop. Like, we need to stop this conversation because it's not like you're
And
right.
having yeah.
I'm a perfect example of this. I had no clue how to do that until therapy.
You couldn't tell me like 2 years ago what a boundary was. I'd be like, I don't know what that
Yeah.
is.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you. I think I told that to my therapist. I was like, I don't even know what a boundary is. You can let me know what that is,
Yeah.
please.
But it's true. Like, you don't. And it doesn't have to be a therapist. Maybe you're lucky enough to have somebody in your life who, I
Right,
mean,
that can help you out.
but I mean, somebody who actually knows what it is would be really great to start
Yeah.
off with. But it really is so interesting. But okay, I want to backtrack a little bit because we told you guys that we were going to talk to you
Yeah.
about what the wonderful gold nuggies that they gave us about how to move through stress. And this part, when I first listened to this part, I had a couple of like moments of wow, and then I got to like experience them a little bit and sit in them a little bit and try them out, and then started to come up with like understandings for why it is the way it is.
Yeah.
But I'm going to list all of them out that they shared, and then we'll go back and talk about them a little bit. So ways to complete a stress cycle, for your body to complete a stress response cycle. The fucked up part about this is that between Maria and I, there are probably 12 different stress cycles still in our bodies from like 3 decades ago.
Yeah.
But anyway, here's how you can finish a stress cycle. Any way of moving your body. Perfect example of like how I said when I like do my little freakouts.
Take a walk.
Yeah, literally that.
I took a walk this morning. That's
so proud of you.
Yeah, thank you.
Taking big breaths, having a positive social interaction. And when I say positive social interaction, I mean like an actual, like, not bullshit, like a legitimate positive social interaction.
Yeah, because bullshit interactions add to the fucking fire.
Really, they just laughter, and I love how they brought up laughter as like legitimate, like belly can't
relief.
catch your breath, like legitimate laughter.
Yeah.
Hugging.
20 seconds.
Know how much I fucking love that. Like, to the point of relaxation.
Yeah, which is I think 20 seconds or more.
And then crying and creative expression.
Yes. Yeah. Correct.
Okay, so have you ever been in any of these and like felt that happen before?
Yeah. I don't like I take walks every weekend because that's the only time of fucking the week I can take half an hour just to walk around.
Got it.
So when I come back, I'm like, all right, I'm great. This is great. Laughing always helps. Like, totally. Even like laughing helps. I'm not a big hugger, but if it does happen, that's also great. I don't know how to cry yet fully, so like I can't speak to that. I can't. I still can't. I don't know how. I can tear up, but it's not like a sobbing session. You know what I'm saying? That is usually cathartic. Obviously, I've heard. I haven't experienced much.
So,
and then obviously positive, just like being around people that again are not toxic is just a help in general. So like it's common. I don't think people can again put a name to it. It's all putting a name to whatever you're going through.
Totally.
Helps, for sure.
Totally. I had so funny. I definitely have felt it happen without like again putting a name to it and understanding it. I felt it happen.
Yeah.
In a lot of these different places. One of the very interesting things that happened after I listened to this podcast the first time, it was like a couple of weeks ago. I was also writing my wedding vows, right? And I like couldn't put to words this like sense that I have when like I'm with Dan. Like there's like this, and I was listening to something else at the time, and it was talking about like having a sense of safety and what it feels like to be home and all of that stuff. And one of the big one of the big things about like not only moving yourself through one of these stress cycles, but obviously making sure that you're in a safe place to do it, because otherwise you're going
Yeah.
to have more stressors and you're not going to complete
Forget
anything.
it. Correct.
Like
correct.
don't go for a walk at like, you know, the middle of the night when in a sketchy place
That's
where no lights are. Like obviously, like, right, guys, we're talking about like that
correct.
should make sense.
Yeah.
But being a person who I am, and literally there are less things on my list of what doesn't activate my stress response than what does.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've realized, especially because over the last couple of months specifically, a lot of stressful things have been happening.
Mhm.
I don't, I'm just going to say it. I don't have a lot of places where I feel safe.
Same. Yeah.
I'm just,
Yeah.
it's
That's
like, you
that's
know,
fine.
feelers are always up,
That's
especially
fine. Yeah. You're
COVID.
always also anxiety again.
Right,
I
being an
can speak
anxious
to this.
person, like
Yeah. You're always in
everything.
fight or flight.
Right,
Yeah.
like I don't have a lot of places where I feel safe. And I
Correct. Which
think
is
that
normal.
I've gotten really good at like telling myself that I'm safe
Mhm.
because I can feel confident, but it's not safe. Does that
Okay.
make sense? Like
Oh, I see.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna
Yeah.
like I've like started to lay confidence over my safety. So if I'm not fully safe, I make a difference of being like I feel confident, which is like
That's not safe though.
that's not safety. So that's part
Yeah,
fucked
it's
up
a
too.
compromise within yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm compensating, but it's
Yeah.
helping me move forward, right? That whole fight situation.
Yeah.
But I've had moments where like I will and Dan, like this is why Dan's like my kryptonite and it's the worst thing ever. And it doesn't have to be a person, but my cat, I feel like this with animals too, but like you get to a point where like you can't do that anymore, and like everything, this is why they talk about like the 20-second hug when you like reset yourself. Everything just kind of goes
Yeah, you feel at ease.
and then like anything that you're feeling though, like your stress cycle's like, okay, we're completing it now.
Yeah,
So
we're
like
done. We're done here.
Dan, I'll be like a perfectly fine. Like I'll be like full on doing my shit. And this is why I think I get really annoyed when he like I'm full on working and he tries to be
Yeah.
like huggy, touchy feely, because my responses are like, I don't have time for this right now. Like I have to, you know what I mean? Like you can't make
Yeah.
me feel safe because I'm not safe. But I'll have moments where like, and this 100% happened at my wedding, where like we come out and we're so excited and the two of us started dancing and I
Yeah.
just floodgates. Like I
crying.
just started crying
Crying.
hysterically. And he's done this to me before where he will just like hug me and all of a sudden like I feel that whole woof of like, okay, finally I
fine.
feel safe.
Yeah.
And then I'll just start feeling all my stuff.
Yeah.
And I never realized, and then like I wrote about that in my vows, like because
Yeah.
I had never realized before that is something that I have with him that I
Mhm.
don't have with like anybody else.
Yeah.
And that is the key to it. Like I could never put a name to it
Mhm.
before. That sense of safety
Yeah.
is the only thing that allows you to feel like you can complete your stress cycle. And it doesn't have to be in a hug, right?
Doesn't have to be a person. Correct. Yeah.
It can be in a walk, it can be in a thing, it can be in like an
Mhm.
activity you're doing. But
Yeah.
and the sad part about this is, right, I'm a person
Uh-huh.
who grew up my whole life moving and being creative. But because
Doing
I
every
allowed
other thing, right?
right, all those other things, but especially with those two really big things,
Mhm.
because there were always other people in there to watch me and judge me and give
It's
me
not.
criticism, it
Yeah,
was
it's
in a
not gonna
safe
help.
place.
Correct. It's now a triggering place.
It was a triggering place. And when they were talking about this, I was freaking out about it because I was like, I did this stuff my whole life. Like I was moving my whole life. I was creative my whole life. But it was never in a safe place. It was never
Right.
a safe thing.
The key is you have to find a safe way to do it, or to have a safe person.
Which is why all the trauma was still in my body, right?
Which is
why
also
I still
why
carry it.
which is also why when people, like, let's just take moving for example, because that's usually the one that people really relate to, is like exercising. Like, do this for your mental health. Like if you exercise half an hour a day, like that, this will be great, blah blah blah. It is great in the moment, but when you go home and you're not exercising and you still feel bad about yourself, it didn't help. That's the key.
And the situations that people Was that
Something just fell. Yeah. I don't know if you
Someone's
heard
listening
that.
to us. Um, the
Someone
Someone's
heard that.
listening to us. If the situation that you're putting yourself in,
Yeah,
your
sorry. I'm
wall looks
like,
awesome, by the way. I just
thank you.
noticed.
I'm like, what just fell? I don't even know
When
what's
you
on
go
my
back to
wall.
edit later, you'll know. You'll see what it is. I have no
You
idea. I
heard
just
that,
heard it.
yeah?
Oh, I totally heard it. Yeah. The funny part is, right, going back to what I just said about safety, right? If you're
So
telling people,
now I'm not safe. I'm like,
I'm
what
so
fell?
if you're
There's
telling
literally
people,
Go
like,
ahead, I'm sorry.
you're good. If you're telling people, like, and this is my issue with yoga classes, right? You tell people you're coming here to focus on yourself, but then they feel like everybody else around them is judging them. They don't feel safe. They're
Yeah,
not
and
going to
then
complete a
that's an
stress
added
cycle. They're going to be
stressor.
extra triggers. Ugh. Especially with working out. If you're going to the gym, you're going to lift weights.
And if someone
Spot on.
yeah, if you're going to the gym and you're self-conscious, that's not going to help you.
Right.
Or if you're going to the gym, you feel great and then go home, something when you were working out, you were now just using that as a distraction and not something to complete the cycle, if you will.
Yep. Damn. And
Because
that I think and that's the thing I feel like we guys
Go
were
ahead.
adding on to their research, like they tapped on this a little bit, but like really safety is the key to stop yourself from from being able to
Some
not let yourself limit your ability to be able to go through the cycle
also
completely.
social interactions too. Like if you're going out to just go out, and I'm guilty of this all the time. I My seasonal depression is during the fall winter seasons. And I overbook myself because I can't physically dealing with my shit. Um Case in point, my Saturdays are booked until December 18th.
Jesus.
So like you can't catch me. Just I cannot I can't I was talking to Ashley this morning too. I was like, I can't take a break or else like some something is gonna come up in my brain and I don't want to deal with it. And it's not like I don't want to unpack it. I know it's just straight up just anxiety. There's nothing behind it, which is the worst part about it because like if it is something if it is something I have to unpack, like I'll go through it, but I know in my brain like I'm fine. It's literally just because I'm depressed.
Right.
There's
And
nothing behind it.
that's the worst part of all of this, right? That's the same thing with my 3 a.m. Like
Yeah.
I can feel myself starting to like my
There's
heart starting
nothing
to race.
behind it.
That's
There's
the
literally
worst part is
nothing.
that when you're so used to being in a place where you're constantly in those fight emotions and you're
Mm-hmm.
constantly having to push forward and you're constantly in a state of not finishing a stress response, anything, whether it has grounds or not, triggers another one.
Yeah. It sucks. Right. So what was I saying? Did I say social interactions? Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
guilty of like just booking myself just to have something.
Mm-hmm.
But also if you are someone that needs a social interaction to like unpack something or whatever, but you're doing it in an unsafe way, you're still not doing it right.
Oh yeah. It
You
is.
have to be with those people that will actually not be toxic with you. That's the whole thing.
Oh yeah. And I feel like that was so much in my early 20s and like
Oh, that was like, yeah. That's like just growing up.
yeah, it's
You have to find your people or a person
and
or
it's not
whatever.
even the people, it's that you have to really it's so guys, being a person is so much work. You need to know for yourself,
What
like,
you need.
right.
Literally what you need.
And then
Yeah.
you find the people who can support what you need, right? Maybe they have similar things to what you need, maybe they need the opposite of you, but like you are in the community of people who can support what you need, which goes back to what we were saying before, that like sense of empathy.
Correct. And like if you are a homebody or like tend to isolate yourself, like it's harder to
Right.
figure that out.
Right.
Because then you're so used to like isolating yourself and then coming out when you're fine, quote unquote, but you're not fine. You just have some reprieve for like 5 days and then you're back in it.
Right, which is what I got really good at, and I'm sure
Yeah, which
you've
is what
gotten really
we
good at too, right? Like
yeah,
you're
I
in your
disappeared during
burnout, and
college.
you run on the radar in your burnout until, and it, like we said, you run on your radar until you get sick, right? Like
Yeah.
I felt myself stress myself out the week before the wedding, felt myself not feeling good, and then the Monday and Tuesday after the wedding, I was like, oh my God. And it's not that I just got sick all of a sudden. It's that my stress was running my whole body, and the rest of my body was like, hey, we don't feel really well. Like, we don't feel good. You should stop and take a break. And my stress was like, no, we don't have time for that.
Yeah.
And after it finally all ended and all the stressors went away, then my body was like, okay, well,
here you go.
By the way, you've been not feeling well for the past 12
Me,
months and now you actually have the time. Now I'm going to
me
make you
after
know
busy
that.
season, literally me
Oh
after
my
tax
God.
season. It happens. It's clockwork.
It's
Yeah,
just so, it really is just so much.
and it's like you have to. It's so exhausting being a human. You have to prioritize yourself. And like, and we said this last time. Like, take the damn day off.
Yep.
Fucking
Honestly, I feel like this was
forget
great
it.
for me because now I know better. Like it's once you
Yeah.
know this. Now I know
Well,
better though.
you know better. It's the implementation. Now that you know what better is the
Yep.
next step
Talk
with
about giving
you.
yourself guilt and shame because now I know better and still not do it and then just feel really bad about it. So it's cool.
It's fine.
Oh
You'll
my
figure it
goodness.
out.
The one other thing that we wanted to talk about with this and something that they brought up was the connection, which was super interesting between, we touched on it a little bit, between gender, like race and privilege. And the privilege is the
Mm.
part that Maria and I are adding in because we know better. But no, I hate, no, it's not because of that. It's because we see it. But
The dichotomy between the two of us, honestly.
very true. The one of the things that they brought up was that when they started studying, well, not they, but when studies were happening about burnout and emotions and the way that people were handling stress, when people don't know how to cope with it well, they start to kind of take it out on other people, which we
Correct.
still see all the time.
All
And
the time.
the unfortunate hierarchy that exists within our society is that men sit at the top and women sit at the bottom in terms of gender. So men can take out their stress on women. And
Uh-huh.
then when you add race into that,
Mm-hmm.
right, it, the hierarchy, I mean, I like, it was the, like, I feel like it was the established hierarchy and we're trying to fight it still, but it still has some relevance.
It's
Was
the
like, it was,
patriarchy and misogyny. It's all the all the bad things
oh yeah, it was like
that turn
the,
into a
the,
hierarchy. That's what you're trying to
at the
say.
bottom of it, it was like, it was like, we're going to go from the bottom down, right? Like, black men have the ability to take it out on black women, and white women have the ability to take it on black men and black women, and then
Yeah,
white men have the ability to take it out on everybody.
correct. So at the bottom is literally black and brown and non-white women.
Right. Right.
And that as a not white woman adds to the stressor of life.
Truth.
You know, and like they did touch upon it because they did, I think if I remember correctly, they're like to add like a layer, like, okay, as a white woman we don't know that we're doing this to other non-white women.
It's like a subconscious
Yeah,
thing.
it's a subconscious thing because they're being pushed down by the white man,
Right. It's
or
it's
just
adding
men
in
in
that layer
general,
of
just
like
men in general. Yeah,
subcomplet, like the fact that white privilege is inbred in us and we're not aware of it. Like that's a perfect,
which
like when we choose to do that,
yeah,
it's a perfect example of it.
which and I could obviously probably speak to it more than you.
I yes.
um Again, I have white friends, clearly. Case in point, I'm doing this with a
Hi.
white friend.
Hi hi.
My best friend is a white woman. Like, okay, I have really great white friends. But when it comes to like racial issues and just my um issues, what is falling in my house? Do you hear
That
that?
sounded like a tin can, honestly.
And I don't know, is because so I'm taking a break on my rant. That is open. Like, I don't know
Oh,
if it's
it's
like
probably not you.
outside.
That also sounded like something hitting the inside of like a, you have like a garbage thing near you.
Yeah, there's a dumpster over there.
Yeah,
Which why
that
I'm
sounded like
like,
something hitting a dumpster.
there's nothing on my wall besides the stuff right behind me.
You're
So I'm
fine.
like,
You're fine. I'll keep my eye, like my peripheral vision on the outside so that I can see.
thank you. So where was I? Oh, so when I'm dealing with like specifically racial or cultural or whatever differences or just like things that I deem, I don't know, not white. I don't know how to do like say this, but
Mm.
I don't I used to go to my white friends, but obviously there's something lost in translation because like I have a lot of white friends and just like, you know, I'm usually closer. I work with a lot of white people, so like I'm physically usually closer to white people, but there's something always lost in translation and it doesn't help me. It like actually hinders me. So like now with the community that I have, especially in the Filipino American community, it fulfills me in other ways, and like that was a shift that I had to learn because now it's a safe place. Now me talking about other things that are not specifically white American culture is now safe with other communities that I have. So
Got
it's
it.
like, again, same thing, like you have to be safe in this space, and it's not a slight to anyone. like I think the guilt of me not sharing that to my white friends now, it's gone, it's dissipated. But in the
Yeah.
beginning, I was like, this is a part of me that you probably won't ever see fully. And
Yeah.
like I felt bad, but also it's like, okay, that's not their fault.
Yeah, but
Like
it's not a
it's also not a slight to anyone. It's just like I'm not being fulfilled in that, so I'm gonna redirect.
it's
So that's less stress. That's like one way that's like now less stressful. Is like if I have something super exciting and like I don't know who to tell without like them not like you won't
understanding, like it coming
exactly. And
across,
like
right? Yeah.
right, and like that's like annoying to me like
Hmm.
intrinsically, because it's like all right, they're not as excited, so this is weird. But like now I have a community and I'm like, guys,
Yeah.
like XYZ, like this is
But that's
great.
so
Like
important because it's a part of you. You're getting validation from an
it,
important part of you.
exactly. It's like
Yeah.
it's another layer of being racially diverse or whatnot,
Mhm.
especially as a woman, because
And
that's
like
again another
in
thing.
being a person. Like I know
Correct.
my parents have known me for 30 years and there's parts of me that I've learned and developed as I've gotten older that I'll never be able to have conversations with about my parents.
Hmm.
Right? Or like even with
Same. Yeah.
Dan, there are part like he's never going to understand my dance stuff or my existential stuff or like he because that he just like when he it's like the same thing when he tries to talk to me about football and I get a really long way and I'm like I'm out I'm
Yeah. I
sorry.
got here,
It
but then you
yeah,
went this way. Yeah.
it's not a but we are like that with each other with music and food. Like we can
Yeah.
those conversations go, but it I think that's such a good thing and I think that you and I love what you guys do with like with your
Hmm.
group.
Yeah.
I think that we need to be able to
Cultivate
advocate for
spaces.
that more. Like
Yeah.
that's why community is a thing. Otherwise, it would be like, and that's why people are always like, and I can tell you this too from like all the stuff that we've been doing at the weddings. It's like all the advice that we get about like being married and stuff is that like it can't just be you two.
Yeah.
Like it can't. Like it is. If it all comes down to it, it's gonna be us against the world and like whatever, all that stuff. But like the reason why our relationship works the way that our relationship works is because he has me for whatever he needs me for and I have him for whatever I need him for, and there are some basic things in a relationship when you're married that like you're supposed to have each other for, but like I also if I get I don't
Hmm.
know if I need to talk about my if I need to talk about something I don't know God for like I'll have you that I can talk about random things with, or I'll have Alyssa and Sam that I talk about things with, or I'll have work friends
Right.
I talk about things with. Like
Right.
I think that's a good thing.
I agree completely, but I feel like it's so it was I don't know what it had to deal with trauma, past trauma and all this stuff.
Mm.
Like it just had to deal with all that and my whole how I saw relationship dynamics throughout my childhood, that like I felt some guilt and shame of like not being as open to
Mm.
like certain people because we've had this relationship for like X amount of years. And like again, quantity of time doesn't matter, it's really the quality.
Right.
I was just as an
Right,
aside,
like what we said before, right? You can be friends with somebody or in their life for a really long time and never have a substantial conversation.
a case in point, like my whole childhood. um so it's like getting past that, and again it's all the whole self-awareness and getting past that and like ending that, if you will, cycle. Now I feel better. You know,
Good.
like now it's like I feel, I mean every day I feel like a little bit better, which is a good thing, I guess.
Isn't that the goal?
Isn't that really the goal? So yeah, I mean like that's also an added thing culturally, I feel like. And I'm
Yeah,
sure
that's
many of us BIPOCs probably have that, especially if we are um in like predominantly white communities.
yeah.
It's like
Like what?
we don't know who to turn to when something isn't clicking with our white friends, and if you don't have that community, like it can really hinder you.
And it's got to be like just talking about that sense of safety, right? I know what this makes me
Yeah.
think of, which is like this is
It's a
one of
lot.
the it's going to be such a cliche, guys, but I don't know this, so I only know what I see of it.
Yeah.
What this makes me think of is have you ever seen Hairspray the musical?
No, but no. And
Okay.
like I
So
feel like uh it had a lot to do with race.
yeah, oh yeah, it has everything to do with race. But there's a scene I like recently watched the like the newer version of the music, whatever, it's way more PC, but I recently watched the newer version of the musical and there's a scene where like this tiny little white girl like back in the day like white kids didn't get in trouble, right? Back white kids didn't get detention. It was all the black kids got sent to detention. So there's this
It's still happening
Tracy.
now.
That's true.
Yeah.
Tracy, so true. Tracy gets sent to detention, and there are all black kids in detention. So when she walks in, they're all like, can we talk to her? Like, is this
Mm.
like, is this safe? Right? Like, that is a layer that
You're not gonna know.
I'm never gonna,
You're not
I
gonna know.
only know,
You only know
like,
through the gender.
mhm.
You only
And
know
I
through
know
the
it,
gender. Yeah.
right. But, and I know it from what I see and when people talk about it, but I don't have that layer over me.
No, and it's a privilege that you have.
Correct.
Yeah. Because then, I mean,
Correct.
like, again, another stressor, and this was back in the day, is that I was never fully 100% safe with the white community.
Mm.
I feel like still today. I mean, just in general, I feel like that
I
could be
mean,
just
and
a
shit is,
BIPOC.
I mean, the sad part is like, it wasn't that long ago that like Asian hate was like, we were seeing
Let's
it every
go.
day. I mean, it's not that we don't see it every day, but we were seeing it every day on the news. Like, it was a,
Yeah.
that wasn't that long ago. And like, it
No.
does happen every day still too, even if it's not happening on the news. So
Right. And it's like,
I get that.
and it's an added stress to
Yeah.
many, if not all, I'm going to say many BIPOCs. It's just
Mhm.
an added stress that we carry day to day that doesn't ever go away,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
And that's why, to go back to what we were talking about before, that's why it's so important. One of the terms that they bring up is that um, what we
Mm-hmm.
need to do more of is leaning on each other. And
Mm-hmm.
when we don't check our privileges and like the way that we're not coping with emotions, we can lean down on people. And
Mm.
like exactly what you're talking about, if you are somebody who is white and carries the privilege of what it means to be white without having to worry about that, is that safe for me? You can unknowingly be taking out your
Yeah.
shit by leaning down on somebody who is not white.
Right. And like, again, I say the white community as an all encompassing thing, but I have safe spaces in that white community,
Right.
aka this
Oh, right.
podcast, aka Ashley. Like it's again,
Totally.
find the safe pockets within communities that you are, I guess, privy to, I guess. I don't know if that's
Yeah.
the right word. And then you'll be fine there. Right.
Yeah.
Like, but I 100% time white community, like, or just like being a BIPOC is in America is just being is literally just a stress that I will have. And I don't think that cycle's ever gonna break, honestly. And that is also why we're at a disadvantage.
Yeah. I mean, it just makes sense, which is the saddest part. And what
Mm-hmm.
doesn't make sense is that like we're the land of
Oh.
the opposite of that. So I just like, or we preach about being the land of opposite of that. I I don't know what the answer is. There's like,
There's no real answer.
there is
Like
no
the
answer.
answer is
But
that
it
like
comes back to what you no, I think the answer
yeah.
is what you really said, is you have to find those little places where you do feel safe. And that's like, that's for all of this, guys.
Yeah,
Like
that's
that's
just
like
all encompassing.
for whatever, if areas or certain things around race are things that are stressors for you, then
Mm-hmm.
you need to find a safe place within that. If like whatever your stressors are, you need to find, whether it is like an actual coping mechanism to finish your cycle of stress, your stress response, and an action that you take, or it's a group that you're with, whatever that is, it's figuring that out to
Yeah.
help improve your quality of life.
Mm-hmm.
Because the rate that we're going right now with the way our society functions is that all of the, unless you're actively doing the work to find the safe places, the way that the gamut is going to run is that the stressors are going to constantly keep increasing, and the amount of stress that exists in our lives is going to keep increasing, and the amount of safe spaces that we have is going to keep decreasing, because the powers that be want us to be afraid. Like, I'm sorry, but it's the truth. The
Yeah.
powers that be want us to feel unsafe and want us to be afraid, because that's when we take like just quote unquote justifiable action that wreaks terror and like breeds victimization and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
can
Yeah.
put like a good actually, also side note, talking about this, happy Diwali, friends who celebrate Diwali. Diwali is,
So,
this is, no, this is relevant because I'm talking
okay.
about like good and evil now, and like
Yeah,
Diwali is the
happy
celebration
Diwali.
of good and evil. So like,
I live in a very predominantly I'm just gonna say brown community. A lot of people are celebrating have been celebrating Diwali by like blasting fireworks and like putting up a ton of lights
lights,
outside
I
their
love
like
it.
I love it. Like
I
I think I
we
sat
all
out.
need to celebrate Diwali. The whole reasoning behind Diwali and like the understanding of like the overcoming
Hmm.
of evil is like
Yeah.
such a good thing that we all just need to, however you want to fill in the blanks of what that looks like and the stories that you want to tell, because different cultures like within Indian culture talk about
Hmm.
and Hinduism talk about different stories that are related to Diwali, but
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
overarching theme of it is awesome. And it made me think about it because that's what we're talking about, right? We're talking about you
Hmm.
have to find the good to overcome the very growing outright evil that exists in our world. And you are the person who's responsible for that. And if you can't do it for yourself, it makes life way harder.
Correct. And I feel like if you don't even seek it out, you're severely at a
Okay.
disadvantage.
If you just go with the flow of the fishes
And
downstream, there's a waterfall very close.
and also like if you are seeking out and you get frustrated, like I just say keep going.
Oh yeah,
As
it's
annoying
worth
as
it.
it is. Yeah,
It's
as
worth it.
annoying as it is, like it just keep going.
I agree.
Hmm.
This was one. Well, this is like a good way to wrap up what we've been talking about because this is one very heavy
That was
episode, everybody.
that was a lot.
But next week will be more fun because we'll be talking about wedding stuff.
Yeah, we'll recap Brittany's wedding.
Great, and I'll be far enough from the trauma of it that I'll be okay to have the conversation. And then we have more friends who are going to be joining us in the future.
Hmm.
We'll tell you about that as those get solidified. And yeah,
Great.
use the rest of this day, or if you're listening to this on like a Wednesday morning or you listen to this Tuesday night or whenever you end up listening to this episode, I hope that you use the rest of this day to
Hmm.
really do something that can help you complete a stress cycle, whether it's one that you started today or one that you started 20 years ago. Give
Have
yourself
fun.
some time to make the space, friends, to do that.
Have fun. I literally just thought about doing like me doing that, like the thought of me actually doing that. I'm like, wow, I don't want to do that today.
No, and that's fine. And maybe it's not today. Maybe it's not
Maybe
today.
eventually. It'll be eventually.
That's okay too, because we gotta figure out how to overcome this stress stuff because
Hmm.
it's everywhere.
Yep. Cool.
All right. So when you go to do your thing to complete your stress cycle, remember that you
Hmm.
deserve to live your best life. So don't be afraid to be more.
Oh wow, bye. Yeah, I forgot about that.